Lord knows I love a good party. There's no two ways about that. And yet you know, maybe even better than I do, that anytime you have a party, whether it be a dinner, a barbecue, cocktail party, whatever it might be, it's work. And there's always a Martha and a Mary somehow or other involved in that. There are those people that are in there washing the dishes and doing the cooking and getting all those things done. And then there's the other one that's walking around and arranging one daisy and kind of keeping things together. But the fact is, when we get there, it's all important. But I want to go to that first reading. It's a wonderful reading as Abraham welcomes in hospitality these angels. Stop and listen to what he says when he goes into Sarah and she says, "Quick, knead these measures of flour into bread." Anybody ever make bread? Okay, this isn't popover rolls we're talking about here. You know, that's a lot of work. And then he goes out and picks a steer, which is going to be slaughtered and dressed and then cooked. Those guys sitting in the terebinth of Mamre. A terebinth is a pistachio tree. Oak tree, pistachio tree. It's bush, large tree, which in those days was dedicated to the chief god of the people, El, the sky god. And so they were sitting in this shrine waiting for this meal. It's a little bit like sitting at Denny's waiting for breakfast. You know sooner or later it's going to come out. But they probably got a good nap while they were waiting. But it's important because these three travelers sit down, and not only are they physically fed, but they are also rested, welcomed, their feet are washed, they're made to feel valuable and important. In fact, they are. But Abraham at that moment doesn't know that. I don't know if you know kind of where you're sitting right now. Obviously in this church, but there's been a worshiping community here in this area, in Spreckels, for over 100 years. We started out, our first worship site was the second floor of the Emporium, over there on the corner of Hatton and Spreckels, upstairs. And then in 1910, the Spreckels Company brought a previously used church over from the Alisal and put it on the corner of Yano and 2nd. And that was St. Joseph's for a long time. And then in March 31st, 1963, this church was dedicated. But there were things here on this site before we had a church. This is the site, the land, on which sat the Spreckels Inn, which is where the single employees of the sugar distillery, or sugar refinery, lived. And more or less, I haven't seen the floor plans and everything else, but we can imagine that maybe more or less this would be the dining room. Because it's very close to the bakery, which was Western Cabinet Building, now soon to become our pastoral center. The food that was cooked over there was brought over here. And John Steinbeck was an employee. Frequently ate dinner there. You could be sitting in John's seat right now. Can you feel it? We've been about feeding for over 100 years here in Spreckels. Whether it be from the simple act of baking bread and serving it as part of a meal, or welcoming workers, welcoming parishioners, welcoming those who are looking for a place to pray. We have been a home that welcomes, a home that nurtures through word and sacrament, a home that allows friends to meet. It's interesting, if you remember 2 years ago or so, when I was installed as pastor, a number of people came up to say, standing on line to get those salads was a real pain in the neck. But I met all these people I never met before. This is really good. I've got new friends in the parish. People came together. Relationships were built in this hospitality that is offered. A feeding that took place. More than the food, it was the connection of people. And all of that gets summed up and brought to this Eucharistic table, when by virtue of God's word, we are called to this table not as strangers, Not as people who just happen to be here, nothing else to do on a Saturday night, but as people who are uniquely bonded together through the sacraments of baptism and Eucharist, fed, nurtured, enriched with a unique set of relationships, all of which comes under the giant umbrella of hospitality. We have been feeding people here in our home for over 100 years. That's a wonderful thing for you and I to be proud of. It's a wonderful thing for you and I to engage in and to become both Martha and Mary. Because any party needs both. Any meal needs both. We need the Marys or the Marthas that are in the kitchen getting all of that done. And some of you, I know, are frequently here on Sunday mornings for either the 9 or the 11 o'clock Mass. And we have hospitality over in the hall. And it's more than just coffee and a couple of donuts. You know that. I mean, sometimes you can take out a whole meal from over there. But it's people who are willing to share, not just food, but share of themselves, share of their faith. And we all do it voluntarily. And so many people take turns just signing up, hey, I can do something, and connect. It's that feeding, that connecting, creating a home that welcomes, a home that educates, a home that feeds us as human beings. Because hospitality is far more than just what you put on the plate. Hospitality is what welcomes me and makes me feel like this is my home. I'm valued here. I'm welcomed here. And that's been happening here for over 100 years. And so I think this is an opportunity in this Eucharist for each of us to recognize first and foremost that our God welcomes us. We are all welcome in this place. And second, to extend that invitation to others, to extend that invitation to each other. When at the sign of peace, the deacon offers, and encourages us to offer each other the sign of peace. And as you've heard both of us preach, that sign of shalom, that sign of we belong here together. That sign of peace that is the rightness of God. So that together we can come forward to once again be fed at this table. Once again be fed in this community. Once again experience the peace of our God.